Hello everyone and welcome to Andy Shed Live. This is Series 12 episode number 16 for Sunday the 7th of May 2023. Hello there everybody and welcome to the show. It is indeed Sunday the 7th of May once again. Well, it's not been Sunday the 7th of May since last year, but you know what I mean. We are here once again. It is Sunday evening. The sun is shining outside. We've still got to have the light on in here because it all comes from one side, and one side of me looks washed out, and the other side of me you can't see. So we're still under artificial light in here. But yeah, here we are for another Sunday evening, live for the next hour and a bit or so. If you've never joined us before, down here you will see some of the regulars in the YouTube chat. If you're watching this live on YouTube, you are more than welcome to join in the chat. Just go to the Andy Shed page and find the live stream there if you're seeing it elsewhere, and you will be able to join in the live chat from there. If you are not live and you're watching on a smart TV, that's why the chat's on the screen there, so you can see it and you can see what we are all talking about. Who's with us this evening? We've got Peter Blackburn with us, we've got Penfold with us, we've got Christopher 2000 with us, we've got Wesley with us, and we've got Miguel with us as well. Penfold says hello to everyone from offshore in the North Sea. Who is working on an oil rig? Crikey! I don't know whether that would be a good place to be or not. I've not quite decided. But hello to you anyway, Penfold, out there somewhere in the North Sea. Hopefully Penfold's working hard to make my petrol and diesel a bit cheaper, so we don't have to get it all from Russia. Wesley's with us, Union Andy. Christopher's with us, says hi. Peter says, did any of you get to see the coronation yesterday? Wesley says he saw a bit of it. But wasn't glued to the TV for the entirety. No, neither was I. I actually turned it on at just the right moment. I turned it on just in time to see the fly past. So I watched about 10 minutes while they did the fly past, and I turned it off again. So yeah, I was in the right place at the right time for that. It's a shame the Looney Lancaster wasn't involved in the fly past. The Lancaster bomber, the one that still flies, was supposed to be in the fly past. Obviously the one that still flies. The one that doesn't fly wouldn't be in the fly past, would it? But because of the bad weather, it didn't take part, which is a great shame, because that Lancaster bomber does some crazy things. I've seen it do some absolutely mad manoeuvres. The interesting thing about the World War II aircraft and the Battle of Britain flight and all that is the aeroplanes that you think would have been manoeuvrable in World War II, things like Spitfires and Hurricanes and that, when they come and do a fly past, and you can book them for your special event, you know, you can book them to come and do a fly past and stuff. If you get the Spitfire or the Hurricane, they just go phew that way and phew that way, and that's basically it. That's all they do. But if you get the bigger aeroplanes like the Dakota or the Lancaster bomber, they come in and they don't just fly past, they bank around and go on the side and sort of pivot on a wingtip and do all kinds of mad things in the sky. Particularly the Lancaster. I mean, I nearly crashed the car numerous times because the Lancaster bomber has buzzed me, you know, very low over me, when I've gone out through Lincolnshire and places like that. I remember seeing it over the M25 once, near Boreham Wood, near where the A1 meets up with the M25, and the Lancaster bomber, it flew down the M25. and it then sort of banked over, pivoted on a wingtip. It was almost sideways on, it looked like. Pivoted on a wingtip, and then went back the way it came. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was going to crash on the M25. I did. I was, it was so low. Absolutely unbelievable. Really, really, really excellent pilots on that. They must be. Whereas it says, yeah, it's the same with the Vulcans in the jet era. I think it's the wing surface area that does it. Yeah, I think it is, Wesley, because they don't fly so fast, do they? They're going slower, and so they can do these crazy manoeuvres. I saw the Vulcan a few years ago. I mean, it's grounded now, unfortunately. But I saw it a few years ago from the top down. It's in the time when I was at the Tramway Museum at Christchurch. And if you go up their line, to the far end of the line, what they call Glory Mine, because it's named after an old lead mine shaft that was up there, you look out over a valley, and I was up there one day on a tram, and I just happened to look out the window, and the Vulcan flew down the valley, and it was below me, because you're quite high up at Christchurch. It was below me, and I'm looking at the Vulcan from the top down. I'm looking at the green khaki side, not the sort of blue-grey side underneath it. So I've seen the Vulcan fly from the top down. How many people have seen it that way up? But yeah, amazing thing. And the noise from that had to be heard to be believed. Peter says Spitfire flights take place from Duxford. They fly over here quite often. I think a flying experience is a few £1,000s. Yeah. I think there's quite a few Spitfires still around, actually. In fact, I did watch a TV program a few years ago. I think it was, when Ewan McGregor and the other guy whose name I've forgotten did a couple of series where they were travelling around all over the world on motorbikes. There was one called Long Way Round, another called Long Way Down. And on one of those, I think, they went to some foreign country somewhere. It was probably somewhere in India. And they were building brand new Spitfires. Yeah. And I've only ever seen it on this one programme, and I'm starting to wonder if I imagined it or not. But I'm sure they were building new Spitfires there. A bit like now they build new steam engines, I suppose. But yeah, what they ought to do is build some new Lancasters. Lancasters are cool. Like I say, the Lancaster has buzzed me a few times, and the earth moves when that flies over you. Wesley says, I saw the new now grounded Vulcan once and was glad to have seen it. Yeah, it was a great airplane. Because it was based not a million miles away from me, I actually saw it a few times. In fact, a young girl who I used to take to college when I used to drive buses, she always said, there's a Vulcan at the bottom of my garden. And she was right, because she lived basically just at the perimeter of RAF Finley, and the Vulcan was at the bottom of her garden. You could see sort of down the side of her house and to the back and over the back fence, and there's the tail of the Vulcan. Quite incredible. She had the Vulcan at the bottom of her garden. That's a hell of a garden ornament, isn't it? I'm just catching up on what everybody's saying in the comments. Christopher's been out and about too. He says he went on an old 1980s tram last night. Old 1980s. It's 1980s old. Crikey. I'm feeling old if we're thinking 1980s. 1980s aren't old by tram standards, though, are they? So 1930s old by tram standards. 1980s is modern to me. Anyway, yeah. Wesley's going, the noise indeed of Vulcan's Bristol Olympus engines. Yeah, are they Bristol engines in a Vulcan? Yeah, I think that's part of the problem why it's grounded, isn't it, the engines, because they can't get technical support for the engines anymore. God knows how you get technical support for a Spitfire, but not for a Vulcan. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, it does seem a shame that the Vulcan's on the deck, because it was one of my favourite aeroplanes, the Vulcan. Right. If you're hearing lots of sort of squeaking and banging about in the background, that is Thor the dog, who has this week found a squeaky ball. So my apology if you're hearing eek 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 in the background. Pete says Spitfires were originally single-seated, so the ones used for experiencers have been modified. Yeah, I think, Peter, there were a few double-seat sort of training planes built. That's the way I understand it. I don't know. I'm not an expert on aeroplanes by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand there were some double-seat trainers. Dominic's here. He says, "Is Thor staying?" Yes, I think he is, Dominic. I think he's decided he is. Thor, come here. Thor, you wanted. Thor, where are you? Come here, mate. Come here. Are you going to... Come on, up here. Up here, say hello. Come on. Up. Up. Up, Thor. Up. Up. Come on, say hello. Yeah, Thor's not coming up to say hello. You might have to... we might have to... no, he's off. He's going. Alright, good boy. No, he's not staying around long enough to say hello tonight, he says. Wesley says Bristol Siddeley was taken over by Rolls-Royce. I never quite know. All these companies. You see, Bristol Siddeley, is that the same Siddeley as in Armstrong Siddeley that made engines? Is that the same Siddeley? Is that the same company? Not sure. I've got absolutely no idea. But yeah, all these companies get taken over. One takes over another, and then they take over another, and then some of them split bits off, and oh dear, it gets a bit confusing. But I do know that the engines were a problem with the Vulcan. Something about they couldn't get certified parts or something to keep it going, and that's why it had to be grounded. Does seem like a shame though, that. But who knows? Like I say, perhaps they'll build a new one, like they're building new steam trains and things. Whereas he says Bristol Siddeley was a merger of Bristol and Armstrong Siddeley, he thinks. Yeah. Bristol was a strange company. They made all sorts of things. They made chassis for buses, Bristol. They were, in the 1970s, if you got on a double-decker bus in the UK in the 1970s, there was about a 50% chance it was probably going to be a Bristol. And then they made aeroplanes as well. Yeah. If you ever travelled on a Bristol bus, you wonder how the aeroplanes flew. But yeah. Right. Okay. We are getting there, I think. Slowly. The telephone world has been a little quiet this week. Thank God. After about 43 phones arrived sort of over the last month or so, you'll be pleased to know that absolutely none have arrived this week, which is rather good. A few other things have though. So this week we're starting to go through some of the phones and stuff that have arrived. Wesley said they made Leyland buses up in my part of the world. Are you somewhere up near Preston then, Wesley? You must be Wokington perhaps, or somewhere in that sort of area. Dominic says he's got his 232 King Pyramid telephone out for the coronation. Oh, very good, very good, Dominic. And yeah, the King Pyramid bit, in fact, the pyramid bit in general, is actually a relatively new term for those phones. It certainly around the time that the Queen Elizabeth II was crowned, King Pyramid phones were not called King Pyramids. They were not even called pyramids. It's a modern term for the phone that's come around in recent years. They were just called 232s or whatever. Alright, so I'm just moving things. Christopher says he's been to the tram depot that Malcolm was filmed at, the old South Melbourne tram depot. It closed in 1987. Alright, if you've not seen the film Malcolm, you should go and see it. Now, Christopher did send us some photos, which I need to find somewhere. And I will try and find these photos for you now. Because I filed them in my ever expanding filing system that is just a little bit bonkers, my filing system. Right, where are they? They should be. Here they are somewhere. Just bear with me a second. I am looking for them. Right. Here they are. Right, if I can get these up and show you, that'll be marvellous, won't it? Hang on a minute. Right, let's have a look and see how this works. Right, that seems to have done it. Right. So right. So this first photo of Christopher's, you're going to have a quick guide of Melbourne trams here. This is what they call a B2 class, that was built in the late 80s, early 90s, and you'll notice it's articulated. This is a relatively modern development for Melbourne. In fact, I'm quite disappointed having seen these photos, because I remember Melbourne having proper traditional trams, and they seem to have got lots of horrible modern looking things now, so I'm quite disappointed. It's kind of put me off going to Melbourne, to be quite honest. Well, that's one from the 80s to the 90s. Now this is slightly more like it. These were built late 70s to early 80s, what they call a Z3. Not quite sure why it's called a Z3. I wonder if it's something to do with the controllers, because there are controllers what they call Z4 controllers. The doors on that are quite interesting, very reminiscent of a Leyland National bus from over here, those doors. Wonder if they pinched them from somewhere. um, but looks like it's been refurbished as well, that tram. With the dot matrix, or LED rather, destination display. And then here's another one. Right, what's this one that we've got? This is an A1 class from 1984 to 1985, which is again a single unit. Bit modern looking though. But these would be, of course, the right way round for the UK. If anybody wanted to buy some old Melbourne trams for operation in the UK. And there's an A2 class which looks broadly similar to me. And then that. If there's going to be an award for an ugly vehicle, that probably gets it. Whoever designed that ought to be shot, because it's just awful. Absolutely awful. Who came up with that? They're not much better. Yeah, it kind of puts you off going to Melbourne, doesn't it? It does. My friend Harry always used to say, why is it when they've got something the size of a tram, with all that blank space on the sides, why do they have to put the writing for adverts over the windows? And he has got a good point, look, because there's advert boards built into that tram on the top all the way along, and no ad on them, and they've plastered everything all over the window so you can't see through. Even though it's what they call contravision, that you can theoretically see out from, in practice it's very difficult to see out through it. And there's another one, a D2. Yeah, I'm still not keen. I'm not keen. That'll be a four-wheel unit as well. They are actually mounted on 3 four-wheeled trucks, one under each end and one under the middle bit, and sort of, it's been known since the 1930s, maybe even before, that bogie rail vehicles give a better ride than four-wheel rail vehicles. So what have they done? They've gone back to using four-wheel rail vehicles. Then they wonder why they derail and bounce about and do all kinds of weird things. But yeah, not great. And it's all to do with getting a low floor, which is why they've done it. And then again, absolutely awful. Got to be one of the worst designs I've ever seen. It is horrible. And another one. We're on to the E class now. We seem to be going up. 2011 to 2017. At least they managed to get all the windows in line on that. E2. What's the big bright red light for in the front, Christopher? Is that some sort of like brake light or something? Yeah. Made by Bombardier, that one. Oh dear. Yes. And then we've got what Melbourne trams should look like, and indeed did look like until relatively recently. There were quite a lot of these about, what they call the W class cars. This is a W8, which I'm guessing is some kind of modernised W. Don't know how many of these there are, but at least there are a few left around, and these are basically what star in the movie Malcolm. If you ever get a chance to see that movie, do have a watch of that. If you're into the old trams and that, and you like a laugh, Malcolm is a very, very funny film. It has been on TV in the UK, I think once, which is where I saw it. But it is quite a funny movie. Right? You didn't see any of those, did you? Because I'd got the wrong camera on. Right, let's do it again then. Right, right. There you go. Now you can see them. So there's the W class, which is the sort of traditional Melbourne tram, but there aren't many of those about now. They're more things like that. And they're just not nice, are they? I don't know who designs these things. I think it's probably Stevie Wonder. But yeah, they just look awful. And also they're too big. You know, get that in the city street, mixing it with traffic and that, you know, what's the point? You might as well have a train, which indeed they do in America. Trains do run down the street in America, and that, I think, that's the one that I said. I think that's probably the worst design I've seen in a long time. It just looks horrible. There's not a straight or flat panel on that. It just terrible. What the cost would be to maintain that when it needs a new body panel or a new piece of glass, God only knows, because there is not a flat or straight panel anywhere on it. And they are not much better. At least the sides are flat on there. But yeah, that's what I say about them being 3 4-wheel trucks, one under each end and one under that little white bit in the middle. And if you look carefully, there's sort of lift up panels so you can get at the wheels. But I'm guessing the ride is probably horrendous, because a lot of modern trams in the UK are that wheel arrangement, and the ride on them is terrible. A slightly shorter vehicle there. That's probably on 4 bogies, that, so that probably rides a bit better, being a 3-section car. Another, we'll gloss over that. And that is a sort of traditional layout, because it'll be a 2-bogie car, that, because it's a 1-section unit. What are the little stop signs that stick out from the doors, Christopher? When the doors close, those stop signs probably fold in. But why are they? What are they for? Stop walking. Or is it something that are they cleaning it or something, and that's something they've put on like a do not move sign on the railways, to tell people not to get on it? Is it something like that? I don't get what that's for. But they're very good photos, these. These photos are quite impressive. I'm quite impressed with the fact these have been taken at night. What camera did you use for these, Christopher? Yeah, I mean, that one's okay. That one's acceptable from the 70s to the mid-80s. That's a sort of modern, traditional sort of looking tram, isn't it, that? It probably rattles quite nicely, that. As all trams should. If you've got a tram that don't rattle, it's not a tram, is it? yeah. So there you have it. They are the photos from Christopher 2000. When I finally managed to get the right camera up and displaying them. Right, what is everybody up to in the chat? Right, I'm just catching up what everybody's saying. Dominic says, did the event at Hege go well today? Yes, the event at Hege Windmill today went very well. They've raised a bit of money for the old windmill. They're needing about £200,000 because of some rotten timber in the top of the mill. Some fairly big timbers in the mill cap that have gone rotten, and they need to replace them. And they reckon it's going to be about £200,000 to replace them. So they're on a bit of a fundraiser at Hege Windmill at the minute. If you want to donate to them, I think they've got a Facebook page and stuff and that. Yeah, they've had their sales stand out in force today, and I must have spent about £30 on their sales stand today. So I've gone a little way towards the 200,000 that they want. Christopher says there are only 10 of those W8 trams in service. That's not many. It's a bit of a shame, that. Dominic says the E2 class look like it has a big chin. They're just awful, aren't they? The modern whoever designs modern trams in general ought to, like, you know, if they came up with the designs that they have for modern vehicles, if they came to me with them, I'd like give them back and say, go away, must try harder. Yeah, because they're just terrible. Peter says, are there any driverless trams? There was in Blackpool once, but that's another story. I'll tell you that one in a minute. Dominic says, I quite like the 80s ones. Remind me of that experimental tram on the Blackpool tramway. Oh yes, yes, Phoenix, because it keeps catching fire. Yeah, they do look they look very like that, actually. I wonder if that's where you got the idea from. Christopher says, that sign sticking out is a stop sign to stop cars passing the tram when at tram stops. Well, a car can't pass it, can it? Because there's a tram stop there. Unless it's when it stops in the middle of the street. Does some of your trams still just stop in the middle of the street and you have to walk out to them? Is that what it's for? Dominic says, Blackpool Jubilee and Centenary cars are the ones I'm thinking of. Yeah, the Blackpool Jubilee cars were not actually new trams. The Jubilees were are balloons. They were two Blackpool balloon cars that had new ends that were built by Dupel Metsek, Dupel of coach building fame, and they basically bolted new ends on. If you look at Blackpool 761 and 762, the Jubilee cars, they are exactly the same frame as a balloon car, because it is a balloon car frame. But to get the bigger windows, they cut out every other pillar in the bodywork, which is why the windows are long and thin on them. But yeah, I worked very briefly on 761 and 762 in Blackpool as a conductor, and I tell you, they are big vehicles. 761 is one of the highest capacity single unit trams in the world. 761, I think I think it seats about, does it seat 100 or does it carry 100? It's a, I think it, yeah, it's a massive capacity, 761. Chris says, did the video play I sent you last week of South Melbourne Tram Depot, the one in Malcolm? It didn't, Christopher, no. I don't know why it didn't play, but it kind of opened but didn't play. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. I will get it to play, though. I just need to maybe try and play it through a different piece of software or something, or convert it into something else. Because I would have thought it would have played. Yeah, Peter, about the driverless trams. Yes, there's a story from Blackpool that goes back to the days before they had these, what I now call the purple plastic caterpillars. When they had the traditional trams. What Dominic's referred to, something called the centenary cars, that were built in the mid-80s. They were relatively traditional except for the control system, and the control system in them was basically a joystick, which I think you pushed it forward to make it go and pulled it back to make it stop. I always thought you should push it forward to make it stop and back to make it go. And it may have been that way around, because I thought forward to stop was a good idea, because if your driver was ever incapacitated and collapsed on the controls, chances are they'd collapse and push it forward. So I thought forward to stop was a good idea. And also when you're braking, it throws you forward in your seat, so you push the thing forward more. But I can't remember which way around it was. But anyway, the point is, it was a single joystick control, and the middle thing was off, or like neutral. And there was an interlock on this controller, which meant if the doors were open, it couldn't draw power. And also, I believe, if the air was down as well, if the air in the system, because they had air brakes, if the air in the system was below a certain level, it also couldn't draw power, because they were air operated, basically. There was a spring parking brake on them, I believe, but the actual brake itself was air operated. So, what happened? This very early one morning, a driver came to the tram depot to get the first tram of the day out, and got on, powered it on, and found the tram wouldn't move. So he tried all kinds of things. He tried turning everything off, turning everything on again, moving this joystick controller fully forwards, fully backwards, back to off, taking the controller stick out, putting it back in. All lots of things that you're told to try to get it going. Very early in the morning. Hardly anybody about in the depot. And he couldn't get it going. So he got the lights on, he got all the power on, he got the compressor going, it was building up air, and that just wouldn't move. So he got off the tram, just left it there, powered up, and went to find an engineer, went to find a fitter. And what the driver had neglected to do was to check the pressure level of air in the system, because although there must not have been a buzzer on, because normally on buses and trams, when there's low air, you get some kind of warning device, some kind of audible warning. But the audible warning does not always necessarily go out at exactly the same point that any other interlocks go out. And what had happened to this tram was it got no warnings, as far as I'm aware, but the air was just a little bit too low to blow the brakes off. And because the air was too low to operate the braking system, it couldn't draw power. So he tried everything to get it to power, and he'd made the fatal mistake of not resetting this joystick quite to the central off position when he'd been fiddling about with it. So while he was away, so the story goes. I don't know how true this is. This is what was told to me by another Blackpool tram driver. That the story goes that while he was away looking for the fitter, the air rose to the critical threshold. The relays kicked in, and the joystick was just slightly forward. So that was just enough to make it power very slowly, sort of walking pace, out of the depot. And all the points out onto the promenade to go north are trailing, coming out of the depot, or out of the old Rigby Road depot. Which means it just goes click, 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 click through all the points. It forces them across itself. And this tram goes trundling very quietly and very slowly out of Rigby Road to Manchester Square, all by itself, and out onto the promenade. And it's heading north on the prom. And another driver, luckily, was walking down the promenade to work, and he saw this tram moving very slowly. Went to sort of wave to the driver and see what was wrong, because he thought there was a fault on it. Realised there was no driver on it. Well, he managed to jump on board, because it was only sort of moving at walking pace. He managed to jump on board, take the thing under control, and take it back to the depot. But apparently it made it out onto the promenade. Now, I don't know how true that is, but it was told to me by another one of the full-time Blackpool tram drivers. But it's a well-known story, and that was one of the centenary cars. I don't know which one it was, but it was one of the centenaries that made it out of the depot, sort of under its own power, and there are no dead man's handle on them. They didn't have a dead man's handle, the centenaries. They just had this joystick, and now a lot of modern trams have some form of dead man's handle on them. On the super trams in Sheffield, there is like a bar, like a handrail in the cab that you put your hand on that's not on the controls, and this little handrail thing has got a little button on it, and you have to keep this button pressed in with your thumb. But So a lot of the modern ones do now have some kind of dead man's handle device on, but these didn't. These sent it, and it went out on its own. A similar thing happened on the London Underground when they went one man operated on the London Underground. There's an interlock between the doors and the start. Now, a lot of the London Underground trains, the driver doesn't actually drive the train. All he does is open and close the doors, and then he presses an arm button in the cab. And so you close the doors, press an arm button in the cab, and then the thing drives itself automatically to the next station. And you can't arm the automatic driving until the doors are closed. And I believe they also have a dead man's handle that you have to keep pressed in all the time. But the London Underground drivers used to hang a bag on the dead man's handle, because it was, you're cramping your hands to hold this handle in all day. So they used to somehow wrap the strap of a bag around the dead man's handle. And this driver had got this train in the station, closed the doors, beep 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 beep, all the doors closed, presses the thing for it to go to the next station. No joy. So he looks in the little cameras, and because there's monitors at the end of the platform, like TV monitors, which are where the driver can look at these monitors and see down the side of the train, all the way down the side of the train. And he realised there was a set of doors open part way down the train, which is why he couldn't move the train. So he got out of his cab, walked down the train, kicked this set of doors, the doors closed, and as the doors closed, the train pulled out of the station and left the driver on the platform. London transport, what can you say? But yeah, so that's at least twice where the vehicle's gone without the driver. So yeah, these things do happen occasionally. So yeah, they're not supposed to be driverless, but they sometimes are. Just for laughs. Not supposed to be, but are. Right. Where are we? Christopher says the photos of the trams in Melbourne. He says he took off his phone. They were really good photos. Say they're off a phone. What sort of phone is it, Christopher? Miguel says, who remembers the old London trams in the 50s? I don't remember them, but I've had dealings with them. Also, the very old trams in Portugal. Yeah, well, the very old trams in Portugal, there's not so many as the ones were. Again, it's a bit like Melbourne. They've replaced a lot of them. But they do also appear in Malcolm. At the very end of Malcolm, he's moved to Portugal. And you see the Lisbon trams and that. The little ones that go in and out and round all those little side streets and things. That's also in the movie Malcolm. I can't recommend that movie enough. It's very, very funny. Dominic says, it sounds like that tube train just became the DLR between those stops. Yeah, but the DLR normally have a staff member on board. Yeah, DLR is very strange. It's very freaky to be on a vehicle where there's no driver at the front. I've travelled on the DLR, and I kind of know how it works, and I'm expecting it, and I know there's no driver on it, and I've been on it, but it is still freaky to sit at the front of that and there not be a driver there. You think you're going to be okay with it, but when you actually sit there, it is weird. I mean, I guess you get used to it over time, but it did seem very, very strange to me. Right, okay. So yeah, so that's the tramway stories and that. And if anybody out there like has worked for Blackpool Transport or anything, or got any tramway stories, let us have them. Leave a comment. let's have your tramway stories and things. But there is a class of tram in Blackpool, what they call coronation cars. And they've been trying to get one back into service, but not managed it in time for the coronation. So that was a bit of a downer for them, really. Right, what we were supposed to be talking about today, before we got a little sidetracked, was we were supposed to be going through some of the phones that came in last week and the week before, and some of what came in are American. Now, I often get asked about American phones, particularly American dial phones, because there seems to be a bit of confusion about how they work in the UK. So let's get hold of one and see if we can solve some of the confusion. So, here's one. This is one that arrived the other day. You've seen this one before. I showed this one a couple of weeks ago, I think. Let me move things so you can get it a bit more in shot. There we go. Yeah, so this is an American 500 series. It's a little odd because it's got this kind of extra box thing in tow. I'm just detangling it at the minute. So there's your phone. Here's your line cord from your phone, and it's got this box coming out the side, which actually goes to the curly cord here, which then goes to the handset. So this box is a kind of loud and soft box, which must do things to the to how loud the handset is. Now, if we look inside the phone, we'll see how it's wired. Now, to get these off, I always forget how to do this, but basically you need a pin, and I have for weeks had a pin on this desk, which now, because I want it, has gone AWOL, of course. Oh, it's there. Right. So, what you have to do is somewhere here there's a tiny hole in the dial, and you stick a pin in, and I forget which way you have to turn it. Is it yeah, I'll say you stick a pin in, and you have to kind of turn it and keep turning, that's it, and then that comes off. So what you do is you stick a pin through that tiny hole which is there, and what it does is it pushes this bit of metal down here, and that then disengages on a clip on the back of this. So you have to make sure with the pin you hit that bit of metal there and push that down. So that's how you get your finger wheel off. And then to put your finger wheel back on, that's kind of where you want to be with it, isn't it? To put it back on, you have to turn it back like that, and it clicks, and it's back on now. You see, so to get it off, you put your pin in, touch that bit of metal, and it'll go round, of course, to the stop. But when it gets to the stop, push your pin down to push that bit of metal down. Then keep turning, forcefully turn a bit more, and you'll feel it go loose then, and that's how you get it off. But of course you don't actually need to take that off to sort these phones out, but you do need to take it off if you want to do a bit of cleaning, which we will do while we have got it apart, that, because it is a bit dirty. So I've got my trusty tin of Brasso here, which I need to shake up actually before I take the lid off. I think they've changed the formulation of Brasso. Brasso used to be a abrasive polish, and it doesn't seem to be as abrasive anymore. So I think they've changed the formula of it. It still smells the same though. But you just want something very slightly abrasive, I find, to clean these plastic phones. And Brasso does still kind of do the trick. Now don't worry about rubbing the letters off, because on a quality old phone the letters are kind of set into the plastic. They're not just screen printed on the top, which is the problem with a lot of these British replica phones, that the letters are printed on the top. But on these, they kind of set into the plastic, a bit like on good quality computer keyboards. So you should be able to just clean it quite nicely. And as they always used to say on Blue Peter when they got bored with things, I don't really have enough time to do this at the moment, but you can take more time than me. That was just Janet Ellis's way of saying I'm bored now. But I hope you can see that has made a fairly significant difference. I'm going to put the lid back on this before I spill it, because I'm really good at spilling Brasso. I've got a degree in Brasso spillage. Right. So I'm going to stick this back on for now. These are entirely different to how they work in the UK, of course. these finger wheels, because you actually have to put the label inside it, so you have to kind of look at where it's going to be in reality, and try to put the label in the right place, which is not always terribly easy. I think about there, perhaps, and then you have to try and get the label to sit in there on its own, and then you can put that back on and just turn it backwards, and it goes click, and there you go. There. So, yeah, very interesting, fetching shade of sort of pale pink, this phone. They seem to like this pale pinky colour in America. It's not a colour they ever did in the UK, but it seems to have been quite a popular one in America. Right, so we were going to take the top off this, weren't we, and have a look inside it. Right, let me move a few things out of the way so we've got a bit more space to work. Right, just bear with me 1 second. Just moving a few things. Put that in there. So, there we have it. Right, I'll put my pin back up there. So, because this phone's been converted to modular, there are things we can unplug. So what we'll do is we'll unplug the handset and this boxy thing at the minute. There's a little, so you can just unplug that out of the side of there like that. So there's just a little lever thing underneath that you just put in. See, it's like a spring-loaded thing on there, similar to on a UK plug. And it's at the bottom of this when you plug this in, so you have to sort of lift it up and pull it out, and then you can do away with the whole handset for a minute. Right, what appears to be not modular on this, which is strange, is at the back here. So this should have a modular connector on the back, I would have thought, but don't know why it hasn't. Perhaps it's been messed with. So let's have a look what's happening. Now, to get these apart, there are 2 screws, one at the back and one at the front, both kind of slightly offset. These are normally retained screws, so they normally don't actually come all the way out. Having said that, that one has done. That one hasn't done. Wondering if that's the right one or not, because that one seems to have got a different thread. I'm not sure. Right, but now we can just flip the whole thing back over again. But as I've said many times on this channel before, none of this British rubbish having to fight to get the case off. Just lift it straight off and it comes off as cleanly as that, because it's American and it's designed better. Right, so now we're inside it, we can have a look what's going on. So here's your line cord, and we've got a black and yellow here that's doing nothing, and we've got a green and a red that are doing something. Now that green and red, they are, I believe, your line 1 and line 2. Now this particular network, as they call it in America, hasn't got writing on the side. Some of these phones have a different network in, and you will see written on the side a kind of wiring diagram of what's on the top. But if we look at the top of this one closely, it has got in the plastic what the things are. So here it says L2, just there. It says L2 referring to this. And I'm guessing for this one it will say somewhere L1. I can't actually see it at the minute, but I'm guessing it will somewhere. So my thought is, if we were to put a line cord just on to those two, it would work. Don't worry about bells and capacitors and things. I think if you just put a line cord onto there, it would work. So the question is, do I have one anywhere to hand? And the answer is possibly not. Let me have a little look and see if I can find one. Do-be-do-do-do-do. Do-be-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I don't think I've got one. It's not attached to anything at the minute. Right. Right, so I'm going to put that one. I'm going to put that phone to one side for a minute, because I need a line cord to just put onto that. So I'm just going to put that one to one side a minute, and we'll have a look at this one instead. Now this is a development on from an American 500. This is a 2500, and it's a broadly similar phone, but with DTMF push buttons. Push button phones, working with tones rather than pulsars, were introduced in America in the late 60s. They were way ahead of the UK with these. This is a relatively modern example, manufactured in 1993, and you'll see it's a 2500 and then 45, but 2500 is the key bit of that. If you can see that there, 2500. And again, it's very similar for how you get into it. Two screws in very similar places, but I'm expecting this to be quite different inside. Crikey. There's always one, isn't there, where it's so tight you have to stand up to unscrew it. Right, one moment please, as Big Clive would say. That's it, it's going. Probably never been undone since the phone was new. Right, so we'll turn that over. Top comes straight off, and as you can see, The network's entirely different. It's all basically on there, so it's kind of more open inside this one, which in a way is better, because if anything goes wrong with it, you can get at it. You can see what it is. Now, this particular phone has plugged into it a UK cord, so, and it's plugged in by modular again, so this one has got a modular jack on the line cord, and you can just unplug the line cord. So that is the line cord socket for it. And coming out of the modular jack here, there's red, green, white and black. Where do they go, one asks oneself. Well, red and green will be the line, because it's American, and red and green are generally the line in America. So it's all bundled up in these cable ties that I don't really want to mess with. I'm guessing they're coming up here, these red and green here. I'm guessing they're the ones. White and black do appear to be plugged in, but let's see if this phone actually works on a UK system. So I'll just plug the thing into my little socket down here, and then we'll have a listen. It's off hook, yeah, and it is working. So I should now be able to dial my phone here, and it rings it, and it is dialing by tone, because I can hear the tones as I press them. Right, so if I leave that on hook now, and I lift up my British phone and dial on that, the American phone dials until it falls off the hook. Let's do it again. I'll hold the hook switch down. There you go. It's making that ring that only American phones do, and it's working. So I'll answer it, and we'll do the old trick of blowing down one and listening the other. I can't hear because of my headset. Hang on. Yeah, that's working. Yep, that's working. Never used to wear a headset on these live streams, and now I do. That's progress for you. Not. So that one works. So that one's totally fine, and it's DTMF. And very similar colour brown to a Yeoman. Is it the same colour? I have no idea. What does it say on there? Premiere, it says on the handset there. So that one is the modern iteration of a 500 series. But the 500 has evolved. It's never really changed. It's evolved over the years. So it's not a million miles removed from the original version. So if I put that there, if I do it the other way around so you can see the business end, there's your modern 500, or 2500 rather, and there's your original 500, and you'll see basically bell coils are, bell gongs are the same, coil is the same, network is in the same place, although it looks slightly different. Mountings for the dial and that are broadly the same, slightly different but broadly the same. Feet on it are the same. So yeah, they haven't really changed that much from sort of 1950s right up way into the 90s and beyond. Very, very similar. So we will put the top back on this brown one, and of course the plungers for the hook are retained in the top there. On a genuine American phone, they are generally clear. On most they are clear, those. But what you have to do when you're putting the top back on one of these, now take this other, the clear plungers that there you can see them there, look, can you see that there? And it's retained in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this original 500 series back on the floor a minute while we put the top back on this, because these modular phones are a bit complicated in that these little modular jacks break very easily. These little grey things that you plug into, they break as easy as looking at them. They really are not built to last, those little modular things. So the easiest thing to do, and I'm just running out of space to put everything, is to try hard to uncouple them. Now that one there, the little thing you should be able to unhook it with doesn't seem to be present, so I'm not going to, the little tag that you should be able to unclip it with doesn't seem to be there, so I'm not going to unclip it, that one. So I'm going to, so it's got slots in the base, you can see there, and the idea is those slots in the base slot over the edge of the base plate of the phone. Yeah, and then the phone case itself drops on, but these sort of frame bits, these ridges, go on the outside of the case. So you've got to line two of these things up as you put the top back on the phone. And I think we've done it like that. I think we're now lined up. So as you can see, they are on the outside, and the little thing is, it's all retained now. That little grey plastic thing that was wobbling about all over the place is now secure, partly to the case and partly to the base. So let's put the screws back in as we know it works. There we go. Screws back in. Handset back on. There we have it. So that one's working at least. Great. So there's at least one that we know works. Okie dokie. Yeah, the reason I couldn't get the line cord off of that one was because it's one of these connectors and that bit there was missing. So that was the whole problem there. There we go. Right, so that one works then. So that is a 2500, and we've got a number of these. We've got a black one as well. Which is broadly similar. That's a brown one, that's a black one, which is broadly similar, except for in the details. The black one has also been converted with a British cord on it. But what's nice about the black one is the handset. I think I showed this the other week. It's an Olympic handset for the Atlanta Olympics. Atlanta 1996 Centennial Olympic Games partner. Lucent Technologies. Formerly the communications system and technology units of AT&T, which is an American operator. So there you go. But you may notice this one, though, this black one. When were the Atlanta Olympics? What's the date on this black one? This black one is different in that it has got a modern plastic base on it. So I'm guessing this one is going to be very different inside this black one. So this one was very similar to a normal 500. Let's have a look what's inside the black one, because it's a more modern looking thing and I think it's going to be quite different on the inside. But before I do, I'll just see what everybody is up to in the chat. Miguel says you can't beat Duraglit. Probably very true, actually. It is quite good Duraglit. It's not abrasive though, really. Not for polishing phones anyway. At least don't think it is. Oh, it might be actually. I don't know. Yeah, you're making me wonder now. Penfold says, don't just remove the plastic parts and put them in the dishwasher. You can do, I suppose. Gambo's joined us. He says, hey peeps, just in from work. Nice phone, Andy. Is that the white one you won on eBay? No, it's not. It says, oh no, it's got a brown handset. Gabbo says, it's just like mine, but I've not got the jack plugs to change the handset or line cords. Right. You've not got the jack plugs on yours, so yours has probably got what they call the mouse hole. And so it's pre-modular, which in a way is good. Right, let's have a look at this one. This one has got the correct jacks and things, so I can unplug the line cord on this because it has got the little thing on the jack to unplug it. So I can unplug the line cord, and also to get it out the way for a minute, I can unplug the handset as well. That makes it a lot easier to deal with on the desk. Right, so let's have a look on the inside of this and see what this is like. It immediately feels lighter. Also, the screws are in a slightly different place, and they feel like these are probably self-tappers from the way they're tight to come out all the way. I'm not going to take them out all the way if I can help it. Also, the feet on this are smaller, you'll notice. So all in all, cheapened plasticky phone. Have we got any kind of a date on this? AT&T telephone equipment listed. It's nothing that's obviously a date unless it's some kind of date code. It has got modes on it though, this, that can work on either pulse or tone. Here, P and T for this little, P and T for this little switch here. So that's pulse, that's tone. It's got also there I think it says pause, off, on, and then here it's got high, low and off, which I'm guessing is the ringer. I wonder if this is going to have an electronic ringer rather than bells. Does it fall apart yet, or do I need to take those screws out further? No, it looks like I've got to come out all the way. No, definitely got to come out all the way. And they're not retained. So yes, you can lose the screws on this one. Let's have a look what horrors are in store on this. I'm not holding out a great deal of hope for the innards of this one. Ugh! Why do you need all that inside a telephone? Oh my God, talk about overcomplicating something. Jesus. And not only have they overcomplicated it, they've also installed it upside down so you can't see the components. And I know why they've done that. It's so the switches that are directly mounted onto that blooming circuit board poke through the bottom. But oh my. So you've entirely lost the anything resembling a 500 really in this. It's, you know, it's broadly the same shape on the outside, but this is probably more like the modern replica phones that you get. You know, that people like G-Mark make. What is interesting about the keyboard here, though, is it's got the extra keys for the DTMF that some keyboards have down the side there. You see that it's just not populated, but they're there. I can press the little rubbery actuator things, but they are there. But they're just not populated with actual buttons on them. And it's got a ribbon cable, and oh dear, yeah. Not nice, is it? That if that was to go wrong, where do you start in amongst all that lot? Yeah, that's how you make something way more complicated than it need be. And I'm guessing that's your hook switch, which you've got all this mechanism in here to actuate that. Yeah. At least it's sensibly sized components in there, though. I don't know if you can see in there, but at least it's not these horrible little tiny surface mount components. It is sort of sensibly sized electronic components in there. I'm not going to take it all apart tonight because we are a bit pushed for time, but yeah. So kind of the history of the 500 series kind of ends there. It looks broadly similar. It's not actually exactly the same. There are differences to it. And I've not got these little modular things in the right place now either. Oh, now I've got the top jammed on it. Because again, you've got to fiddle about with these, because these modular things are an afterthought, really. They're not designed as part of the phone. That's better. So let's put it back together and see if it works. So one nasty sort of self-tapping screw in the nasty plastic there. One nasty self-tapping screw in the nasty plastic there. I wonder what kind of a ring this is going to make. Because it's electronic, I think, isn't it? Right, so plug back in my bits and pieces. So now get my handset again, which plugs in the side with the little springy tag downwards. So that goes in there like so. And then in the back there we need a line cord, which I just happen to have here. Again, springy tag downwards like that. And then we will plug that in and we'll see if that phone works. So that's plugged into the BT jack now. Oh, I have got a dial tone. Let's ring my other phone here. Yeah, it works that way. So I can now hang that up and I can pick up my ordinary phone, and this is the way we'll find out what noise it makes. Ugh! I suppose it's kind of sort of trim phony. Well, there we go. That's enough of that, I think. So that's our Atlanta Olympic issue phone, which I suppose it kind of tells part of the story, doesn't it? But it is quite modern and it's not really built to the best of standards. The handset is a bit different on these as well. It's more square, chunky, but the idea's there, isn't it? The thought's there. It's the thought that counts. So that's kind of how they've evolved over time, these American phones. But going back to the original 500, that I've got here, going back to this, I think you probably only need the red and the green coming in from this cord, which is all this cord's got. So if I was to put a GPO plug on the other end of this, then I think I would probably get away with it. So that's one that we'll have a go at some point in the future and see if we can get this rather nice old dial phone working. Right, that is almost as far as we are going for today. Where did I put the top of this phone? Oh, it's here. I've found it now. I'm just having a look what people are saying in the chat while I put this phone back together. And I am getting it back together as you can see here. While I'm doing it, we'll have a little look what's happening in the chat. Miguel says, looks like crap. Yes, it does, and it feels like crap as well, Miguel. If I'm brutally honest with you, it's not not the best type of telephone that I've ever come across. It says, is that black phone made in China? I'm not sure. Almost certainly some of the components are, though. Gambo says, I've won a 746 on eBay, and it turns out it's an Ivory Mark 1 from 1967 with the early case, but wired with the handset grommet opposite from what we normally set it up to. It hasn't been modified. Yeah, I think sometimes they just put the handsets on backward. You see, sometimes I think stuff is so old now, and it's probably had so many new components and that as part of its life and stuff, that I think sometimes their stuff just get put back together a bit different. So in the case of a 746, it's easy to mix those two grommets up on the back of the phone, isn't it? It doesn't make any difference to it. And I do see them both ways round, to be honest. And I'm not convinced there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. I've never seen anything written that says the handset will be on the left or the handset will be on the right. Because if they did do that, they'd say, well, which end are you looking at it from, and all this kind of stuff. So I think that's one where your preference springs to mind, and I think how you use the phone, which way round, if you're going to use it, which way round do you put the handset on the rest? And it's best to do it so the cables don't cross when it's at rest and that. So whichever way round you use the phone, I would say that's the way to do it. But the traditional way I've always been told is to have the cables inside the phone crossing. So whereas on the circuit board, most of your handset things, as you look at the terminals, most of your handset connections are on the left. Then the grommet for the handset goes on the right, and most of the line connections are on the right, so the handset grommet for that goes on the left. No idea why, but that's the way around it's normally done, but there's no reason it has to be that way. So it's an interesting one, is that? Equally interesting is this box on this handset that can alter the volume. Apparently, what's it say on the back of this box? Complies with Part 68 FCC rules. FCC registration number, ring equivalence 0.0B. That's what it says on there. Unusual. I've not seen one of those before. Yeah. And there's something taped on this handset. What? Dial 00 to get long dist something. Written on the handset there. So we'll have to get this one restored because I'm interested to see what this box does. So yeah, this will probably be fairly high on my list of priorities to do. Right, so we've had a little look at some American telephones there this week, and this one still needs restoring and cleaning up and that, but like I say, it will be fairly high on my list of priorities, that one. Right, I'll just have a little look in the chat. Gambo says is 74601 is a 1969 model, not a 67. Could have been a 67. They did start making them in 67, I think. But yeah, good that it's a Mark 1 case on it. Right, that is about as far as we go for tonight, folks. I've got to nip off swiftly now and put the neighbours' chickens to bed, because the neighbours are away on their holidays, and I've got to go and wrangle their chickens now. So that could be a fun watch for the next half hour if only we had some cameras up there. But thanks to everybody for taking part once again. As usual, as all YouTubers say these days, give it a like and give it a thumbs up and that, because it all does help the video analytics and stuff. And remember, this may not appear immediately after the show, this live stream, but it will come back in a couple of days' time when I've edited the adverts out, because YouTube are just putting way too many adverts in stuff at the minute. Hopefully new things that you see will have less adverts in, because I have now disabled mid-roll ads on videos. So you only get ads at the beginning and at the end now. Disabled all the mid-roll ones, hopefully. So any new videos, hopefully you'll not get mid-roll ads in them. Which makes it kind of a little bit more important to push things like Patreon, and we are going to be starting with a thing called Ko-Fi soon, Ko-Fi, which will be another way that you can support us, particularly if you want to support the radio station and our attempts to get the radio station on air. There's going to be another episode of How to Start a Radio Station coming out soon, and there will be another live from the radio station soon as well, because we are going to be launching a fund on Patreon, particularly for the radio station, to get the radio station on air, because we've got to a stage now with it where we need to buy licensing for all the music that we play and stuff. We've got to insure the space in the building differently, because people are going to be going in and using it as a kind of working space, and various other things. So there's going to be some big bills to pay to actually now do the final push to get us on air. So we are going to be doing a bit of a fundraiser over Ko-Fi, where you will be able to support us on that as well. But if you do want to support Andy Shed in general on Patreon, here is the link for it. It's patreon.com/Andy Shed, and these good people here already do support it. You may already see your name there. If you do, give yourself a pat on the back for supporting the show, and thanks very much to all of you. We will be back here around about the same time and same place next week, hopefully, for another edition of Andy's Shed Live, and we'll try and get some more of these phones and that sorted out if we possibly can. But from me for now, have a fantastic week ahead. As I say, watch out for another How to Start a Radio Station episode dropping in the week, just a short one, this one, and there are some more that are going through the edit process at the moment, but yeah, it's all coming together. I've been asked today by somebody, when's the radio station started? The answer is we don't know yet. Like I say, we need to do a bit of a fundraiser now to add the final push to actually get it to air, because once it goes to air, it is going to start costing quite a bit more money, because, I mean, a simple thing like having all the electrical stuff turned on all the time, 24 hours a day, you know, it's going to run up a reasonably sized electricity bill. So stuff like that. So yeah, that's just one of the things, and that's why we're going to have this Ko-Fi push. So if you've been wondering how you can support the radio station, there'll be more about that very, very soon. But for now, that is about it from me. Thanks very much for watching the show once again, and we will see you back here, same time, same place, next week. Have a fantastic one, and try not to get too wet in the rain tomorrow, because remember, here in the UK it's a bank holiday, which means it will rain. Sorry and all that. Okay, see you soon. Bye for now, everybody.